As a woman-led organization, empowering women is at the core of everything we do. When I first stepped into this role of CEO, I was honored to become the first woman CEO of the Chamber. I was 29 years old. At that time, women in CEO positions in the Chamber industry were not common. But now, the Chamber industry is filled with talented women executives. It's incredible to witness the support and camaraderie among women in leadership roles, not just in the Chamber, but everywhere. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to my friends and colleagues from other chambers who are here today. Some of them drove very, very, very far. Rachel Bell, CEO of the Chamber. I don't even know how far that is. Vicki Borges Martinez, CEO of the Sherman Oaks Encino Chamber. Pat Clark, Vice President of the Los Angeles Area Chamber. Lisa Clayton, CEO of the Calabasas Chamber. Kristen Dare, President and CEO of the Santee Chamber. Jerry Heatland, President and CEO of the Chatsworth Chamber. Sorry, Chad, I know you're not a woman, but Chad, President and CEO of the LAX Coastal Chamber. Many of you know Chad when he ran the Mid-Valley YMCA. Thank you. And Mary Catherine Mika, Vice President of the LAX Coastal Chamber. Nicole Shahanian, I got a lot of friends, guys. President and CEO of the Whittier Chamber. Jessica Welch, Executive Vice President of the Irvine Chamber. And while Danielle from the Conejo Valley Chamber couldn't be with us today, she has her chamber-led team of women present today too. And of course, our amazing team, we meant to, but our amazing team of women, Fumi Hashimoto and Nikki Bassi. Chamber industry, because we're friends outside of work. A lot of industries are very competitive, but we share everything. And I want to thank my friend Emily Fallopino. She's running all the AV on the music. She used to run the Coachella Valley Chamber, and she moved to the Valley and said, how can I help you? And we love voluntold people what to do. And so, Emily, thank you for being here and keeping me sane. For our first Women of Impact Luncheon, our team came together and created what we felt was our pie in the sky list of speakers. Imagine our excitement when every single one of them said yes. We are incredibly fortunate to have the support of an outstanding woman right here in Los Angeles, Alex Cohen. When we reached out to invite her to come to our event, she not only graciously accepted, but she also offered to moderate today's discussion, much to my relief. I'm sorry, Robbie, I know you wanted me to do it, but it truly feels like the stars have aligned for us today. Now I'm going to introduce everyone. So Alex Cohen has been a California resident since she was 2 years old. Alex knows the ins and outs of Los Angeles. She grew up in the San Fernando Valley and now proudly calls Northeast LA her home. Alex has taken on the role of the political anchor at Spectrum News, so if you have Spectrum News 1 where she covers all the political issues happening at the local and statewide and the national level, so you can see her again on September 5th at our State of the Valley event. So without further ado, I want to welcome our incredible speakers who will share their insights and experiences with us today. I'd like to invite our speakers to join Alex on the stage. Is Mayor Bass, Dr. Glazier, Rachel, and Stephanie, your seats are marked up here for you to take your place, and Alex can join you.
Who wouldn't want to talk to these four ladies who just mean so much to our city and mean a lot to me personally? And I'm really glad, I hope I'm not betraying any secrets here. The state of the valley, we talk about a lot of politics, policy, and hard stuff. And the request today was, can we not talk about that stuff? And I said, oh yeah. I'm going to channel my inner Oprah Winfrey here and just have us have an open, organic conversation about our lives, careers. So I thought we could start with a little icebreaker. And the question is, what did you want to be when you were a little girl? For me, I had three. I wanted to be a professional ice skater, an actress, or a monkey trainer. Do you remember, like, any which way but loose, and any which way you can't tell them, like, oh, I want to train monkeys. But then many, many years later, I figured out what I actually wanted to be. And sometimes I'm still asking myself that question every day. So Mayor Bass, starting with you, and we'll go down the line. What did you want to be when you were little? When did you decide you wanted to be an elected official?
That was way later in life. But let me just say, good afternoon, everybody. It's very nice to be here with you. And don't you think our moderator does a great job on Spectrum? I was watching you this morning. So when I was really little, I wanted to be a doctor. But then when I was around 10, I wanted to be involved in activism, the civil rights movement. I wanted to grow up and be involved like I was watching people on the news.
You did. I should note, I actually knew when I was little, even I went to school, let's just say a while back when we were in grade school, and this is the first time I've seen her in the flesh since, so I'm really stoked to see you, Eve. Tell me what you wanted to be when you were young together, and when did you realize you wanted to get into medicine?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. It's amazing. It's such an honor to be here. It is amazing to see you too, Alex, because I will tell you that when I was a little girl, I actually wanted to be Alex.
It's overrated.
Her mom was my drama teacher, and she was the best teacher I ever had, and she knows this. So actually, I wanted to be an actress and a dancer. And then much later in life, during college, I unfortunately had a very severe illness and a long recovery, and after that, I decided that I wanted to give back, and I cared so much about those who had cared for me, and I wanted to continue that legacy, and so that's when I decided to go into medicine.
Rachel. So I was like you, wanted to be an ice skater. We lived in Ohio at the time, and we moved to California. I think I was about 7, and my parents said they don't ice skate in California because it's too hot. So I always tell my mom, you killed the dream, right? I was going to be an ice skater. And then I wanted to be an astronaut for a while. But the funny story about when I kind of got into the political arena, I was a freshman in college. I went to Cal State Fullerton, and as a freshman, you have to take, poli-sci 101. And I came home, I was a business major, and I told my dad, I think I'm going to change my major to political science. He said, that's not a real degree. What are you going to do to work in politics? And so I said, okay. So I became a communications major. I was a journalism major, so I thought, well, maybe I'll do the journalism. But then I got the bug. I went back to DC. I interned, and the game changer was interning for Senator Dianne Feinstein. And that was it. Once I came back, I just continued on. I still give my dad a hard time today.
And when I was a little girl, what I remember is my dad called me bossy pants. And I think he probably understood what my future would be more than I did. Because like the mayor, I thought I was going to be a doctor. And so during high school, I volunteered as a candy striper. I know I'm showing my age. And that summer, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. So I think it was probably junior year of college. I was a business admin major, and I just had this thought that I love what I'm learning in my business classes, but I wanted to work for the public and be in service to others. And so that was my change, and that's why I'm here today.
And doing an amazing job with Metro. So on that front, I would like each of you to share with our audience today a couple, I'm sure you could each list a lot, but one or two of the things that in your lifetime, being one of the first in your field, if not the first, that you're like, I'm really proud of this moment. And Stephanie, let's start with you.
Something that I'm really proud of being the first, I would say, really helping bring forward improvements for women and family, being able to lift up the needs of women in transportation, actually has helped empower both women within the agency, but also make lives better for the residents of LA County. And it actually turns out that when you improve circumstances for women and families, you improve it for everyone, regardless of their gender. And so that's been really something I'm very proud of to be part of with Metro.
Can I just say that again? When you improve the lives for women and family, I know everyone here knows it, but I just sometimes think these things are worth repeating. You improve lives for everyone, and we thank you for that. Rachel, at the Retail Association, what are some of the things that you've accomplished there that you feel really proud of in your team?
You know, prior to coming over to the retailers, I ran a women's organization. I was the president, executive director for, it was California Women League. And prior to that, it was the California Elected Women's Association for Education and Research. Some of you might remember that. And I spent 17 years just being with phenomenal women leaders and, you know, working, getting more women appointed, helping get women elected, and it was bipartisan. And so when I became they recruited me to come over to the retailers. I'd never done anything like this before. I'd never lobbied before. I was always like, you know, in Sacramento, you're either a white hat or a black hat. And I was always the white hat. Everyone liked me. And then you suddenly are going in and having to lobby on things and like, what do you mean you don't like me anymore? Like, it was a very awkward position for me to be in. But I decided to make it my own. And I think that there are very few women running business associations, statewide business associations in Sacramento. And so when I took the job, I was told this by men, this is what you have to do. Like, you don't ever go into the Capitol, Rachel, because you're too good for that. You're the CEO of a business association. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. So I made my own rules. And I think that because I made my own rules, we've been much more successful. But also because of the relationships I built with a lot of women, because right now, if you look at the governor, chief of staff's a woman. The speaker, chief of staff's a woman. The pro tem is a woman. I was just at dinner with all of them on Tuesday night, and it's very powerful. And I think women bring a different perspective. And I will say it's interesting, because just last week I was told by a male, you're not following the rules, Rachel. And I said, well, I'm making my own rules. And I'm doing it my own way. And I think that's how you become successful.
Amen. Eve.
Well, I mean, I love your answer, obviously, and an entire approach. And I think I'm really proud, along with Table 3 and many others, to really first and foremost bring the incredible, high-quality, compassionate, equitable care to so much of Los Angeles now, especially into the San Fernando Valley, and getting out of Westwood and bringing everything we do to the communities where our patients work and live. And of course, I really center our women around that. And most recently, we've been developing a social drivers of health program. And for everyone, social drivers are those kind of foundational aspects and conditions that are part of everyone's social and economic environment. So whether it's your environment, your genetics, your education, your access to food, transportation, we now are screening for those, just like we would a vital sign, all of our patients, and understanding that these aspects actually contribute to almost 70% of your health outcomes. So building that program, and not just asking, but now actually having resources to address them, partnering with our communities, that's something I think I've been very proud to lead with my team, especially centering around women and supporting women, lifting up women with these resources that have a lasting impact.
Mayor Bass, you've been mayor, you've been a member of Congress, there's all the work that you've done on Community Coalition. From any of those spaces, what are some of the accomplishments that when you look back at your career, you think, this one means a lot to me?
Well, when I have made a significant difference in people's lives, and so in terms of this being mayor, to me, it's getting people off the streets who, if they stayed on the streets, they would die. The experience of people saying to me or crying when I'm out there with the outreach team, I thought I was going to die here, and now, you know, I'm not. But also over the years, especially like at Community Coalition, working with teenagers who are 13 and 14 years old, who are now on the mayor's staff. And they're in their mid-40s. And the idea was to train the next generation, to recruit and train the next generation. So I'm very, very invested in who's going to come after me. But I have to say something about Stephanie, because Stephanie said what she said, but she didn't say that she runs a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. How about that? Being mayor is I chair the board for Metro, and fortunately I sit next to her so she can tell me what I need to do.
All right, and from here on out, this is where we really get to the talk show part. I'm going to throw out a question, and whoever wants to jump in, because we've got a lot of them, not only from me, but also I know a number of you submitted questions this afternoon, and we're so grateful for them. I love that we started off on the positive note of here's what I'm doing, here's what feels good. But let's just even do a survey. Who in the past week have had a day, where, yeah, right, I don't even need to say more than that. For me, it was today, right? But there's going to be those things that help you in those moments when you face those obstacles. And I'd love to hear from you, what is there a go-to that you have when you're having that day, when you're having a day, an obstacle, a challenge, anything where you're just like, okay, I'm doing all this great stuff, I'm the first to do it, but it's driving me nuts.
I hit that. I kick rocks. I set it aside on my calendar. My team knows they cannot schedule me because it's my, and I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I take, it's a class, and these people, couldn't tell you all their names, but they're like my support group, and I just hit a bag. And it's just the best feeling ever. I will say maybe I visualize certain people on that, but that's definitely something that I do, and I have to make it a point to make the time to do it, because I think sometimes as women we don't do that. We'll let other things come in, so I just absolutely protect that time so I can go to the back.
As a former roller derby skater, I say a little sanctioned violence goes a long, consensual, of course. But it goes a long way. Who else? What else? I know that you're a bike rider. I know that you enjoy your outside physical movement time, but what else do you do when things are just getting you down?
Bike ride and swim. But you are describing, I wish I could do that every day. I actually did do that every day in DC, swam at least. But, so I don't have that opportunity as much now. But I do every chance I can get. And what you just said describes about how I feel about every other hour. But the biggest challenge really is dealing with bureaucracies. You know you have a problem and people want you to draw in between the lines. I don't color in between the lines.
I was just going to add, first of all, I bike too, in case, if you're going back together. I've also, I reassure myself that I don't have to fix it at this moment. So, when it's right in your face, first of all, I take the time, get some perspective, make sure I, regenerate my sense of humor. For sure, yes, I love mountain biking, dancing, etc. Being with my girls, but whatever it takes to retain a little bit of perspective, and take a breath, and just not feel rushed. Not making decisions, in a rush really helps me.
Oh, I agree. I had a day yesterday. And so I had to take 3 deep breaths. Not let the itty bitty committee in your head bring you down, and realize that I have a team. Let's engage the team. And I got them on, and we're going to work through it. But I think breathing is always good and not taking it personal.
And I'm really glad that you brought up team, because, I think a lot of times, a lot of us, especially women, feel this need that we do have to do it ourselves and do it alone and not rely on anyone else. But those relationships are so key, and I know in my career, I've found that the mentors that I have had have made a world of difference. And this is one of the questions that came from our audience today. If each of you could share an anecdote about a mentor who played a role in your life and how that helped.
Sure. Well, I'm a big believer in mentors, and I think sometimes people think of mentors mentors, as that's what young people have, and they're older. But everything I've done, I've sought out mentors. So I remember when I got to Congress, I really wanted to focus on Africa, because foreign policy is a love of mine, and so I wanted to figure out what to do on Africa. So I figured out which members of Congress had backgrounds on Africa, and I went to each one of them and requested that they be my mentor. And one person who made a huge difference was Charlie Rangel, a Congress member from New York. And basically, he took me under his wings, kind of sat me down, and then recruited several different members of Congress and said, okay, everybody, we're going to help her. She wants to focus on Africa, and you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that. And pretty soon I was surrounded by members of Congress who had more experience than me. I think it's just really important that you don't let your ego get involved. There's always something to learn. I mean, I'm doing this job. I had never worked in the city before. I had 3 weeks to go from being a member of Congress to being mayor, and needless to say, I needed all kinds of help. And I tried to surround myself with people who've done it before, know more than me, and are willing to share their knowledge. I also like playing that role as well with other people.
Speaking of which, if you've not heard the mayor talk about this, the mantra is lock arms, and I have seen this as an observer, and I just want to say it has been so fascinating and important to watch as you build those alliances, especially with, we've got an all-female county board of supervisors. We've got lots of women, sometimes for the first time, serving as mayors, city attorney, council members, and I think we're seeing that in action in a way, as a longtime Angelino, I've never seen before. So thank you for that. Who else
So I
wants to
have a story that's about the mayor. And I want to say that sometimes you don't know how someone's going to mentor you, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be some big formal relationship. And I don't know, I might not tell the story right, but we'll see if you remember. When I was running California Women Lead and you were speaker, we did an event on top of City Hall. And I think at the time, we had budget deficit, and you were the only woman in the Big Five. And Governor Schwarzenegger was there, and I'll never forget what you said was you literally would go into, and that's the way when you had to negotiate with the Big Five. The Big Five was the governor, the speaker, the pro tem, and the 2 minority leaders. And you kind of made a joke about how you had to counsel these guys to, like, they were almost like men taking all their toys and shutting down, and you had to try to get them to work together because you really had to come up with a solution to this. And I think about that often because I can tell you there are many times I'm like in a meeting, on a Zoom call, and I'm the only woman. And I remember what you said because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this, I'm gonna have to like kind of get on mom mode, get these people to get out of their boxes, because we have to actually solve the problem. We can't just sit here and just complain about it, we have to find solutions. And so that's something that coming into this role has been extremely helpful, and I just wanted you to know that because I still remember. And I think that's the important thing is that you never know when you're going to get mentored by someone, but you never know when you're mentoring someone at the same time. Because you may be in a meeting and some young woman is just watching and how you're, dealing with the situation, and you could have a huge impact on what they're going to do in their leadership role. And so for me, that's been, I've had amazing women mentors, and I always try to pay it forward as well. And I think that the most gratifying thing is you forget, my daughter's a sophomore in college, is watching her now because she learned from watching me, and she says that all the time. And so it's so important, I think, as women to seek mentors, but also find ways that you can be a mentor. And again, I don't think it has to be this big formal relationship. It could be listening to someone speaking at a panel, and it impacts you and it helps you as you become a better leader in your positions.
I'll just add, I've had terrific mentors, and I agree, there's also a mutuality to mentorship as well. Now I feel like we can also seek to mentor, as we seek to get mentors ourselves. My chair of medicine, who has stepped down from the chair, but is our legendary chair of medicine, Dr. Alan Vogelman, has been an amazing mentor to me. And I think about why, you know, as reflecting on this question. I mean, he thought about me when I wasn't thinking about me, and he just nudged me down paths that I didn't even know existed. And when I went to him and I said, hi, you know, I'm thinking about going to business school, he said, well, you're already CEO of your household, so why not? You know, and he always really valued my leadership as a mom, and then said, absolutely, take those skills and, you know, put them into business and the healthcare medicine. But something I always remember him saying, and I carry this with me, is he always just says, make any mistakes. You know, and he's so generous with young people with inexperience, and to me, that's exactly what I like to pay forward to. But I would tell you, and it relates to the obstacle question, I mean, he gave me an incredible gift recently when I was having one of those days, i.e. months. And he actually shared, you know, this person who I didn't even realize ever had a bad day, that, you know, sometimes he said, do you know how many times I've come in to the office and sat in my car not wanting to go in? And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, just this person I had idolized, but it was such a gift, really, right? To share and be a human being together. And I think that's, again, how we also pay forward the mentorship.
And I think I've not been part of a formal mentoring relationship, but two folks who stand out for me, one a male, Eric Haley, what he unofficially mentored to me by his behavior was that relationships matter, and you want to build strong relationships because there will come a time when you don't agree, and it's much easier to address a topic where you're not agreeing when you already have an established relationship than when you don't have a relationship. And then another unofficial mentor told me one day, an email sent is not necessarily an email received. And that has been very powerful to me as I think about relationships. So I would just echo everything that the panelists have said about the importance of it. And I also would say that you need people who are going to advocate for you when you're not in the room. And so that's also important too.
I want to go back, Rachel. I love the short story that you share about your daughter watching you, and this is something I think about a lot, because I think about all the things that I have missed out in my own kids' lives, and that sucks. It really does, and it stings and it hurts, but the one comfort that I kind of always give to myself is I'm hopefully modeling for them that women can and should be able to do anything that men can do as well. But practically speaking, that is very difficult. As women, a lot of times we are called on to do anything and everything all the time and be the CEO of our own household. So one of the questions that came in from the audience was, as women of many hats, how do you juggle various tasks? How do you order your priorities, besides blocking off an hour for kids?
Oh man, if I knew how to do that, you know, that's way above my pay grade. You know, I've made it, you know, and I have, my parents are still, they live in Southern California, they're in their 80s, so I spend a lot of time going back and forth, so I'm caught in the middle, and I have a 15-year-old in high school and a 19, almost 20-year-old in college. It's tough, and you know, and it's weird too, I don't know, watching my daughter who's in college, you know, the first year of college, she's at the University of Utah. She called me every day. Like, she came home all the time. Now she doesn't call me all the time, but it's hard because she'll call me in the middle. She just called me when I was waiting to come in here. Part of it is not feeling guilty. I can't do everything. I have an incredible husband who does a lot of work, but it's tough. And I'm learning to delegate more. You talk about your team, right? And I'm trying not to do everything. And I have a great team who will tell me. One of the women has been with me for probably 10 years. She came with me from California Women League, and she can have those conversations with you that, Rachel, you gotta let it go. But I want my kids to know that they're always the most important thing. The interesting thing with my daughter, and I didn't understand this until watching her now, is I'm having to tell her to slow down. Right? She's trying to do too much. It's almost like you're watching yourself, and you get a little sort of like, oh my gosh, like, because people, if you see my daughter, they always say she's a mini you. And now there are times where I'm like, oh my God, you really are. Is that how I am, right? And so it's actually helping me realize, okay, I've got to now model to her. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to take 20 units. You don't have to work, you know, you don't have to do all of these things. And so that's been really helpful to me, watching her because I'm now telling her to slow down, and she'll say, well, Mom, you don't do that. So when your daughter tells you, you know you have to do that as well. But I do think it's making the time family first, especially with my parents, because you never know, making time to see them, taking those phone calls, and I work in Sacramento, and we have a long legislative process. There's plenty of time. I could leave for a week and still be right back in the same place that we were before I left. And that's something I have to remember too, that what I do is important, but it's not as important as my family and my relationships. And that's something that I really try to take to heart.
Mayor, how do you do it? I think about you all the time, and with all of these things in our huge, huge city, how do you even plan a day? I know that you've got help on that, but how do you approach it to say this is what I prioritize?
Well, I have to do two things at the same time. One is be proactive, and the other is be reactive. But I have to do both. I can't just do one or the other. If I'm reactive all the time, then I can't really move an agenda. And I believe in goals and objectives and outcomes and evaluation. And if I want to address the goal of homelessness and ending homelessness, I have to have a proactive agenda. And obviously there's a lot of staff that do the different things, but I do still have to be involved. So I think that's, and then I have to be prepared. I mean, it's going to rain. I never knew I had to learn about the weather. But even though it's supposed to be a light rain, just so you all know, it's going to be a light rain. However, the hillsides have been soaked from the previous rain, so I have to prepare for a mudslide. But it's in it again, it is also surrounding myself with people who actually are expert.
Karen Bass, meteorologist. Chapter 3. You can do it. I'm going to move to the next question just because I'm going to prioritize, and we've got a lot to get through. So, Eve Glazier and Stephanie Wiggins, I want to put this in. This is actually a great question for the two of you. So, Eve, let's start with you. What's it like being a successful woman in a predominantly male field?
Well, I'm actually happy to say that healthcare is no longer a predominantly male field. But I will say, my father was a physician, and when he was in medical school, there was only 4 women in his medical school class. And I will say that while medical school, right, we probably have more than 50% are people who identify as women, more than 50% in medical schools. 100% though, well, Robbie's absolutely right. We have division chiefs and our CEO, Johnny Spiso. Truly though, it's still quite male dominated. And in terms of the decision makers, the old guard, yes, it's still very male dominated. I think the challenges have been growing up at UCLA. So I actually was born at UCLA. And then I came back from my internship and residency. And so what's been challenging about that male dominated environment is that a lot of these men were my attendings, meaning they taught me, they instructed me, they told me how to be a doctor while I was in training. And then as I, advanced and I've taken on more administrative duties, navigating the kind of those relationships of men, that's been very interesting, right? Because there still is this paternalistic notion, not just in terms of dynamics between colleagues, but in medicine too. So one of the ways I think I've tried to cope with it is just calling it out, just very much calling it out, acknowledging it. I think that's really the only way to start addressing a change in a social structure. But it's been challenging, but I have to say, I remember I was a resident and I was pregnant with my first child, and Dr. James Weiss was my cardiologist, I was in the cardiac care unit, and he was my attending, and he saw me extremely swollen, like almost preeclamptic, and he said, hey, we're gonna round sitting down. Eve needs to put her feet up. So just even those, of course I had the support of my female colleagues, but even having male colleagues who are setting standards and rules like that, that's been very, very instrumental. And I see that more and more where we have a lot more advocacy for women among our colleagues.
I think it's very gratifying to be the female CEO in a male-dominated industry. It's very rare. I think it's been very challenging to get to this role. Quite frankly, for most of my career, my skin color spoke before I did when I walked into a room. And I really wasn't I didn't have to engage in gender-related issues until I got into the executive level. Then all of a sudden, I was Black and female. And so people have said, hey, my people won't report to a woman. I think even for the role that I have now, there was concern about whether or not I really had worked on a construction site in order to be able to lead an agency with a $26 billion capital program. But what they did not appreciate is, well, I never put on construction boots. I've been the head of procurement, and I know what it takes to actually work with the contractor. And I know I have skills on how to negotiate with contractors. I have skills on how to deal with community and the business community. And so it's very interesting. I've gotten over the imposter syndrome for the most part. But when you, as the mayor said, when you are leading the second largest transit agency in the country with a $9 billion annual budget, the men and the women take you. And so what I've done, Alex, to try to be mindful of that is in the instances when I'm asked to sign off on a hiring package for a higher level position, and there are no women who've been interviewed, I send it back because women need to be interviewed. I'm trying to really help people understand.
So remember how we were talking about time management a moment ago? Nancy just let me know that the mayor is going to have to depart soon. She's kind of got a city to run. So we're going to continue our conversation, but Mayor, I do want to ask you one more question, and I think it's really interesting. Happy leap year, everybody. We are sitting on the cusp, kind of straddling the end of Black History Month and the beginning of Women's History Month. Perhaps on both of those fronts, to the points that Stephanie Wiggins just brought up. How far have we come? And how much further do you think we need to go? Are we there yet?
No. You know what, it's kind of back and forth because, you know, there are years when we feel like we've really moved forward. Remember Barack Obama? And then there's years when we have pulled back. And it's why I'm, you know, very grateful that I'm a Californian and an Angelino, because, especially after 12 years in Washington, D.C., because so many of the things we don't really have to debate here. It's just kind of, you know, an assumption. But like Stephanie, I mean, it's the same thing. You know, you have to kind of justify and qualify who you are, and I know that I have both to do because there hasn't been a woman mayor. But I will tell you, I do have to tell you this one story though. When I was running, there was a women's fundraiser. You know, we did a women's event, and I had a woman come up to me and say to me, "You really think you're strong enough to do this?" And I was like, "Did you really say that? Did you really say that?" So I think that, you know, it kind of comes on both sides. So you're always having to prove yourself. You're always having to demonstrate, you know, capacity and leadership because it's not assumed. And I think that's one of the things that's different with men. If a male executive walks in, you assume that executive was supposed to be there. Stephanie, what you said about you've never worked on a construction site. Well, what previous CEO in your job ever worked on a construction site? Because I remember a couple of former CEOs, and they didn't put the boots on. But it gets raised career, you know. Or with me, you know, well, you know, you've never really worked on the executive level, but you know, I was speaker during the time when the state was ready to fall apart. Was that good enough? You know what I mean? But I just, you know, just brush it off and just move forward. I always tell younger women, because younger women especially, and women of all ages get annoyed when you're underestimated, you know? But I kind of embrace that because, okay, just underestimate me, and when you're not looking, I'll get it done, and then you'll go, oh my.
Did you just kind of quote Nikki Haley of all people? Underestimate me, that'll be fun. Mayor Karen Bass, we know what a busy lady you are. I am so grateful. Can we just, before we continue our conversation here, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our That's how you get it done, ladies and gentlemen. You take the moment, you seize the moment. I kind of love what's happening here right now. But what I will do as we let the mayor go, because we also know you are all very busy people, we want to be able to let you get on with your lives this afternoon. I want to put that same question to the three of you. You know, when you look at, okay, here's how far we've come, here's how far we actually should be, what does that landscape look like to you?
So I'm hoping that we can finally elect a woman governor of California, because we haven't done that. You know, the joke in Sacramento is that, you know, if you go to a male legislator in politics and you say you should be governor, yeah, I absolutely should do that. If you go to a woman, and this is my biggest pet peeve, well, you know, I haven't done this, I haven't checked all the boxes. You know, when I was at California Women League, we worked on a project to get 50% of Governor Brown's appointments, political appointments, as women. And I traveled for 2 years all over the state, recruited, we met that goal, no one thought I could do it, we made it happen. But one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give every woman is, you are qualified to do anything and everything that you set your mind to do. Because I would talk to women who would be filling out an application to be an appointee, and I'll never forget, I was in the parking lot talking to this woman. She rattles off, she has a master's degree, she's the CEO of a company. I'm like, this woman is fabulous, this is gonna be great. And then she says, but I don't think I'm qualified. And I just had to take a minute, so I didn't yell at her. But I think that that's part of, sometimes we're our own worst enemy, because we don't think, and you talk about the imposter syndrome, I think we still, I sometimes find myself with that, and I'm like, can I get that out? I forgot what the phrase you used, I love that phrase.
The itty bitty itty.
Yeah, that's it.
Try not to curse.
But I think we're getting there, but I think that we still have a ways to go. And I think that, you know, you look at, you know, I mean, my world is being in Sacramento. We have a record number of women in the legislature. We have a lot of women in statewide office, but we still haven't elected a woman. We've got some really quality women thinking of running for governor, but it's still politics in Sacramento, at least. The lobbyists, the money is still very male dominated. So I still think we have to figure out how women can take more power to make sure, and really funding candidates, having that kind of political involvement is really important, because that's how we're going to make some of the changes. You talk about women's health care, you talk about taking care of vulnerable populations. Women pay more attention to those types of things. And so I think we've made progress, but we still have some work to do.
Yeah, I would just add that as well. I remember when I got into medical school, my friend's mom called me and said, congratulations. I'm sorry, I got into medical school and then I got engaged. And she called me up and she said, so are you still going to go to medical school? And that blew my mind, thank God. But I do think we've come a long way, but I really, really reflect now, you know, that I'm almost 50, how not far enough that we've come. And I think especially, you know, looking at my colleagues, my friends, we have a ways to go. I mean, from a professional perspective, as I said, we might have 50%, you know, more than 50% of women in medical school. There is still so much inequity in pay. There's inequity in opportunity. There's inequity even behind, just in terms of the bias, how we choose our opportunities. So we still have a lot of women going into, for example, specialties, let's say that aren't surgical, because they're thinking ahead saying, well, listen, I want to also be, you know, see my kids. And so then they're not pursuing, you know, certain specialties. So I definitely see that. So we definitely have a ways to go. And I would also say, you know, I totally agree with you in terms of advice, and apply for everything that you don't necessarily you're qualified for. You will grow into it. I grew into the role that I have. But I will say, as I say to my daughters, be financially independent.
Yeah.
I agree that we still have a ways to go. Don't self-select yourself out of opportunities. I will say though, among just us, because we're 50% of the population, we underestimate the power that we have. And a lot of the reasons we don't have a female governor or a female president is because of women and how we think of one another. And I think it was, I forget her name, the ambassador, who said there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. We have to believe in each other. And I think together, empowered women do empower women, and that's what we have to do more of. So I really appreciate Nancy having forums like this so that we can all share that yes, you can do it, because I think we need more of us to believe in each other.
I would love to hear from each of you one thing that you feel like is you talk about the itty bitty committee in your head. Who's the antithesis of that? What is the special trait, your superpower, your awesome sauce that you feel like has been really helpful in terms of getting to the places that you've gotten in your lifetime? For me, because I can see the gears turning for all three of you. For me, it's humor. When I'm in those moments and whatever, I just crack a joke, because sometimes when I want to say something completely different and often filled with expletives, it's just easier to crack a joke. So I think of that as my superpower in those moments. I've given you a little bit more time to think. Rachel.
So, how many of you have seen Hamilton? Talk less, smile more.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot more now, and it, particularly for men, it scares them to death. Like, if I sit in a meeting and I just sit there and I just don't say anything, that's almost worse, because they're like, what is she thinking? What is she doing? She's gonna do something. And I've been teaching that to my team too, and especially, we're dealing with some pretty heavy issues in Sacramento right now in the retail field, and a lot of conversations, and it's actually kind of fun to sit there and watch some of these, and then they'll text me, well, what's going, and they'll try to figure it out, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm not necessarily a game player, but I'm learning how to hold my cards sometimes a little closer to my vest. With some of my women colleagues, I don't have that problem, because I know that they're gonna have my back. So I'll go to some of my women colleagues and we'll have conversations, I'll have strategy, we'll have those types of things. But for me, it's fun to sit in a meeting, or I'll just pop into a meeting and they don't expect me to be at, and I just sit there and I just listen. And that really does make a difference. And I always remember, I have it in my office, talk less, smile more, let them know what you're, I forget the rest of the line, but they want to know what you're thinking, right? And I find that to be very successful.
I think the antithesis of first I do my breathing exercises, and then I recognize that I'm in this position for a reason. And my strength, or my superpower that I call on, is really that strategic thinking element of knowing that I have the skill set to put different pieces together. And I remind myself of that, and if I forget, I keep a folder of emails from employees and members of the public who talk about something that I know I made possible has impacted their life positively, and that's really helps me stay focused.
I would say, personally, definitely sense of humor. Or at least I think that's my superpower. What if it's not funny? But professionally, I would say I think I'm good at making connections between things. Really synthesizing different aspects, different opinions. And I really try hard on bringing people together. I don't do well with disharmony and disagreement. And I try to learn, actually, sit back and say, you know what, it's okay. If you build trusting relationships, then you can have really interesting conversations with diverse opinions and come to such a better place. So I really enjoy bringing people together, connecting them, and really just, I think, feeling that underlying thread of compassion. And I feel that when I'm with a patient, I feel that when I'm with colleagues I agree with yet, people I don't know. And I think compassion and really just talking closely with people really allows you to move forward and really understand the human experience. So that gets me through it.
Eve, when you talked about, approaching 50, I think for many of us, and I think especially for women, you hit a certain stage in your life and it's like, well, your body can't have kids anymore, you're useless, and move along, right? And I think that's for many of us when we just start to kind of feel like, okay, now I've got all these skills and experience, I'm ready to go, let's take on the world. So I'm wondering if you've got some thoughts on third acts, making that transition, you know, how you approach that part of your life as a woman when a lot of stuff in our society right now says, go be a, what is it, coastal grandmother? Was like the, oh, that's so offensive, right? Like just go off into the sunset. What advice would you give?
Well, I'll take it from a different angle, Alex, because I'm 54, and not on the third act yet, but I want to tell you what we're doing at Metro to be welcoming to those who want their third act. We have a strong small business program, and I know the Chamber is focused on local businesses, and so we are really expanding our offerings to lift up not only locally based companies to actually get preference points, but women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and we just want to encourage people, particularly with what COVID allowed, right? COVID, a lot of bad things, but some good things are it unlocked the entrepreneurial spirit for a number of people, micro businesses alike, and so just know that Metro, shameless plug, it's a free enrollment to get on our vendor portal. It's very important to do that on metro.net/business. It's free. It does not matter what you're offering. Get registered on that because that's a resource that our 11,000 employees can use when they're looking to contract with a small business. So, shameless plug.
A good shameless plug. Thank you for that.
You know, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Honestly, and I think part of it is because I'm kind of that stuck in the middle generation because I have my parents that I still have to, you know, take care of, and, you know, I have 2 more years before my youngest is going to college, and who knows, my oldest may be coming back home. We don't know how that whole thing works, but, you know, I think about it, and I think that, okay, what would I do next? I don't know, but I do think there's a lot more opportunities out there. I think that there's a lot of ways that women can rethink what that next act is. I'm amazed at women who do all these kinds of different things, and you know, do a podcast now. You can, you know, write a book. You can do a blog. I mean, whatever. I think it's going to be fascinating, but I think that's where we as women need to also say it's okay. I think an important thing to know, and this is something that happened to me. You know, I ran an association for 17 years, which was way too long. You have to know when to leave. And I think sometimes as women, we don't always know when it's time to leave. We get very comfortable. People depend on us. Well, you can never leave. I was told that you can never leave California and leave. But I did. And they're still okay. And I have new opportunities. And so, you know, I think the other thing is having the courage to make that decision to move on to something else. But I think that I'm cautiously optimistic that there's more and more opportunities for women. And I think COVID was part of it too, because women, I was amazed at particularly what small women, business owners, particularly in the retail field, what they were able to do using social media, using Facebook, you know, getting their products out, making sure they could stay, keep their doors open. And I think that's exciting to see how that's going to continue as women get older.
I mean, I love getting older. I feel so lucky about it. You know, maybe it was from, you know, being so sick myself, you know, early, you know, at an early age, but gosh, I love it. I feel so lucky about it. I also really like, you know, not having to trade on the currency of youth and the male gaze anymore. It just feels great.
Hot flashes, Eve, hot flashes.
But I can help you with those. Because I have a prescription pad. I'm useful to know. You know, I'm not really thinking about the third act, mostly just because I think of it as such a continuum. I mean, again, I was like a complet drama person who then went into medicine and now doing a little business, so I still like doing it all, really. And you know, it kind of asked the question, you didn't ask this explicitly, but you know, how can women do it all? I mean, I think we can do a lot, just not at the same time. You know, and that's kind of what I, you know, tell my daughters as well. And I'm a single parent of 3 daughters. I have a ways to go before they are all gone, thank God. But I think I just try to really incorporate everything I can. I don't want to wait to do stuff. I don't want to wait to enjoy myself. So yeah, if it's 2:30 and I take an afternoon off to ride my e-bike, great. You know, I'll work later in the evening. So it's the everyday, I think, calibration of really thinking about your day. Is this the life that I want to be leading? And like you were saying, also having the courage to change your mind. I mean, our priorities change over time. Things happen. So I kind of lean into how dynamic I think life is. So we'll see if there's a third act. I like the drama reference, but yeah, hopefully there won't be third act. I'll just keep continuing.
You all have given such remarkable advice throughout our conversation today. This is going to be our last question, and it also came from one of the members in our audience. What advice would you give to your younger self or a young entrepreneur who's just starting to succeed and wants to stand out from others?
The advice I would give my younger self, was not to dim your light. I think early on as a little girl, I recall my dad telling me to let my brother win because I kept beating him in board games and to let him win. And on reflection, that stayed with me much longer than it should have. And so my advice is don't let anyone dim your light, right? Don't self-select yourself out of opportunities.
Don't be afraid to take risks, and don't be afraid to fail. Sometimes when you fail is when you learn the most, and you actually become more successful because of that failure. A couple of years ago, I ran for office, and I lost because, the day we were trying to get pregnant with my second child, it wasn't going anywhere. I'm like, I gotta take a break, and you know what's gonna happen, right? The day I get all of my pamphlets and everything in the mail, I went, oh my God, seriously? I was pregnant, right? And I ran in a rural county where I was the youngest woman to ever run, and then I was pregnant. And I would literally go to campaign trainings or campaign events, and people would say, well, who's gonna take care of your baby? I'm like, well, my husband. Or, well, men don't change diapers. Okay, well, mine does. So, but I think that, and I lost. And I remember, the night I lost. My husband is like, thank God you lost. But it actually propelled me, and that loss, that failure, opened so many more doors for me that led to much more success and led me in a direction that I'm much happier than I think had I gotten elected to office. Because I would have been elected to office with a newborn, And so I think to my younger self, I would say, don't let other people define your destiny. And I think sometimes as young women, I see this sometimes with my daughter, it's like, tell her, college is a very limited experience. Don't miss out on opportunities because your friends are telling you to do something. Do what you want to do and follow your passion. And I did that out of college, and that it's those experiences, those risk-taking that really set you on a different path. But again, don't be afraid to fail, because failure is part of succeeding, and you have to remember that.
I really agree with both of those. I would say, we talk about imposter syndrome. I would say let go of the ingenue syndrome, and persona as soon as possible, and believe in your confidence and your experience, and you can still have humility and excitement about learning and, to stay curious, to, as I said, be a lifelong learner, to be compassionate, but also don't let anyone tell you what a leader looks like. Don't subscribe, I'm sorry to say it, but to the patriarchy, there's a lot of different ways to look like a leader and to be a leader. And I'd also say to my 25-year-old self and to everyone, you're already making an impact, and to really celebrate that and lead into that. The everyday really matters. Instead of seeking titles, look for meaningful work. And if you're lucky enough to have a career, my goodness, that's much more important than I think any title or how big your office is. So, and just be grateful. I certainly am. Thanks for.
Want to say thank you on behalf of everybody in this room, to all three of you and to the mayor for sharing such wisdom, your experiences. It's just really been solid solid gold. This is the first time that we've ever had the Women of Impact Luncheon, but I have a feeling it's not going to be the last, and I'm just so honored that we were able to That is it for me. I'm going to thank our audience as well for carving time out of your busy days for our panelists. I'm going to ask you to stay put for a moment so we can take a couple of photos. I'm going to hand it back over to Nancy and her team.
Because this room is full of people of impact. In your homes, in your schools, in your offices, in your businesses, you are a sphere of positive influence on the people that you know. So thank you all for being here. Is there anybody in here that was born on leap year day? Anybody? No. I don't see anybody standing up. So instead of that person getting all of the beautiful centerpieces in the room, if you look at the bottom of your gift bag, somebody at your table should have a little happy face on it. And that person gets to take home the centerpiece. And if nobody at your table has a happy face, I'm the one that had that assignment, and I'm really sorry. Job and I volunteered and pick somebody amongst yourselves. As we can, I'm going to bring Nancy back up here in just a minute. I want to remind you that the pop-up shops are open until 2, and I invite you to please go out and walk through and look at them, take a picture of Jake, my buddy. These are women-led and women-owned businesses, and they offer a array of fantastic products. So please take another look around the tables before you exit. There's unique artists and crafts, innovative solutions, and I highly encourage you to explore that. Your visit here makes a real difference to these passionate business owners, and we just all really appreciate you taking time to take a look at this. The Greater San Fernando Valley Chamber, Nancy specifically, is absolutely unbelievable, and they and they do amazing work in our business community. So, without further ado, see, I cried too. Nancy.
Well, thank you, Janice. Janice is one of our co-chairs. And actually, it's okay, I knew that. You probably don't know that you're one of my mentors. I met Rachel during the pandemic, and you know, if you're a Ted Lasso fan, you're gonna understand what I mean. You're like a badass boss. And I love it. And I learned so much from you. And I think I'm a good advocate, but I watch you and I'm thinking, I need to be like that. And, you know, it doesn't matter, like, because I just turned 60, so it doesn't matter what age someone is, whether they're younger and older, and I'm going to go back to my Ted Lasso thing. If you're a Ted Lasso fan, you'll understand. You have Rebecca and you have Keely, and you can have these intergenerational relationships and you can mentor each other. It doesn't matter when it comes to your age. Well, that's a little story for today, but really, thank you so much, all of you. And Alex, thank you always for doing this, and thank you for talking about imposter syndrome. I was going to have big imposter syndrome with this panel, and I was like, oh, no. So thank you for making me not have to fake it till I make it. Thank you all for joining us today. This was really an empowering event. I hope you enjoyed it. As we conclude, one of the most important things, if you did not have your parking validated, you can do that when you checked in. And I hope today's discussions have left you feeling inspired and motivated to continue to make a positive impact. Let's carry the spirit of empowerment and collaboration forward as we work towards our goals. And thank everyone for your participation. Please visit our pop-up shops. These amazing women-led and women-owned businesses want to show off what they're doing, and they can really use your support. So thank you. Safe travels, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you next year.